Welcome back to the Stratcom podcast. Today we're very privileged to have Dr. Liudmyla Dolhonovska with us, who is a highly regarded Stratcom expert and practitioner from Ukraine. From July 2021 to March 2023, she was Stratcom advisor to the then Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Zaluzhnyi. Liudmyla, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me and for this kind introduction.
Of course. I mean, look, your introduction really raises so many questions, so many fascinating topics to discuss. Could you maybe tell us about your work over the 2 years?
Actually, I have joined the Armed Forces of Ukraine, our Stratcom department, in June 2020, and my previous career was both in academia. I had already my PhD, and on the ground as a press secretary of the head of Civil Military Administration. Then I was the head of Stratcom department of Luhansk Civil Military Administration, working next to the front line with people on the ground who suffered from the war since 2014, when the war for Ukraine has actually started. And I back to Kyiv and worked as a press secretary to the Member of Parliament, head of Foreign Affairs Committee, Ms. Hanna Hopko. And from that position, actually, I left it and joined the Armed Forces as a Stratcom specialist and was privileged to work with my colleagues for 1 year. After I was actually promoted to the position of Stratcom advisor to the Commander-in-Chief. So it was a long way, and talking just about this advisory role, it was quite a challenge because I was a practitioner as well. I was basically the press secretary. I ran the social media accounts of the Commander-in-Chief. I helped to organize his interaction with media, preparing the interview, commentaries, etc. So this was the part of my job, but actually I was deeply involved into working on Stratcom capabilities development in the armed forces, working on communication strategy, working on other guidance and documents, and working closely with my colleagues from different parts of Stratcom, both from military public affairs and with our public affairs officers from our brigades and other units, to see how the work is going on, especially during a full-scale invasion when we had more than 10,000 journalists coming to highlight what's going on in Ukraine and asking for accreditation, and the armed forces were responsible for providing that accreditation and organizing the media access to the front line, to the units. And of course, I worked closely with my colleagues from InfoOps and PsyOps department. That actually was the most valuable part for me, to see how these Stratcom capabilities are actually working together. What is Stratcom in reality? Because when you are just, in the university or in scientific life and trying to explore Stratcom from a theoretical point of view, it's really fascinating, but it's nothing in comparison what you can study from practitioners. Do you feel that there was a big gap between how Stratcom is theorized and conceptualized in the academic realm versus you being thrown into the deep end of the pool and what you had to experience? I wouldn't say it was a gap. I think it was mutually useful. Without the theoretical approach and understanding the concept of Stratcom and how, for example, NATO was always for us as some kind trajectory, how to move, what is the purpose, how it should work. So without this understanding, which is basically from principles of analysis, the information environment, make the assessment, plan well what you're going to do, just design your narratives, key messages, working on communication framework, to implementation, how this coordination actually works, how you arrange these co-working between different parts of Stratcom in reality, and what is about working in a long-term strategy, what is about to work in a crisis situations when you have to react immediately, what about some proactivity when you had to pre-bank something. This is different perspective, and vice versa. Without this practical experience, I wouldn't say I can really understand what is Stratcom just only reading these phenomenal books, articles. So it's always work from my perspective in both ways, and that is really good. Like for me, being back to academia now and have some time to reflect even over my own experience, during these almost 3 years in the armed forces and bigger experience working with the military in different positions. And so this is valuable. Yeah.
You mentioned a key word, proactive communications. And this is a theme that has come up in so many discussions recently, kind of understanding really the impact that pre-bunking had. This is something that has been hailed as a successful strategy, at least in the West, in the US and the UK and so forth. What was the Ukrainian kind of insider perspective on that, on your Stratcom approach in the lead up to the invasion? Were you fully behind this pre-bunking campaign, or did you have your own internal hesitation, internal doubts about?
Okay, let me explain. In my opinion, what is key in Stratcom? Strategy itself. So without strategic objectives, you cannot be efficient as a communication specialist. You just don't know. You will always guess what to communicate, when to communicate, who is your target audience, etc. So strategic goals are the key to being effective. So this is number one. Number two, as soon as we know what are strategic objectives for our state or for our institution, so how to convert them to communication objectives. And then you have to analyze and adjust. Sometimes we joke that change or die. So you just don't have any other choice than adapt your way of communicating to the reality, to the reaction of your audiences, to try to measure results. It's always challenging measuring results in Stratcom, but still it's something important. And it back us to the first point, where your strategic objectives really smart, specific, measurable, achievable, and timeline. So that's important. You see how it works. Without strategic objectives and pointing in a good way, you can't be effective in the end state. So this is some way from theory perspective. In practice, in a pre-phase of a full-scale invasion, what our main efforts were focused to were, number one, building trust. And this is it's not only proactivity, it's the essence of our communication activities to be a reliable source of information at the armed forces. We always were focusing to shape that environment around us, the ecosystem, when people, different audiences, different stakeholders, decision makers, etc., trust us. They see us as a reliable source. So when the commander-in-chief speaks, it's true. When the armed forces released some official statement on behalf of the general staff, it's 100% truth. So that was the key for us to build that trust.
And do you feel that you were successful in building this trust?
We were successful. Actually, what polls tell us that the trust of Ukrainians to the armed forces of Ukraine in 2022, 2023 was 96%, and this is the highest among other state or social institutions in Ukraine, and it was high even pre the full-scale invasion since 2014, but it was about 70-something%, and in the full-scale invasion it raised almost to 100%. So we have gained that trust, and it was so important to be capable to do something more after that. And what happens after the full-scale invasion? Of course, that's about strategic priority. So strategic priority number one was to motivate Ukrainians to fight. From communication perspective, that I'm talking how to translate to communication language, it meant for us to debunk the myth about taking Kyiv in 3 days, that the Russian army is unbeatable.
That is hopeless.
Yes.
Just give up.
We were working hard to convince people that, look, the military command is capable and knows what to do, is completely in charge over the situation and controls it. Look, our guys are doing a phenomenal job. We are experienced enough. We already had 8-year war to be skilled capable enough to fight against this so-called second army of the world. And we did it. And we posted like a bunch of footage, videos from UAVs, drones, from our soldiers who sent us from the battlefield, like how we beat Russians, and it had the effect. And we always called, this call to action is important. We called, again, if you are healthy enough, join the armed forces or territorial defense forces, be a part of this fight. If you can't do this, join the resistance movement, being helpful to the armed forces. Just send us the coordinations of Russian troops when you see them, and just help as a volunteer, etc. Just do, and that was important. Number 2 priority for us was to inflict Russians such losses to convince them to stop. And what meant...
Do you think this is ever possible?
It was our mistake.
Russia is now
it was a mistake.
Lost up to 500,000...
We were more optimistic and humanistic and just believing that they can stop, just acknowledging how many they lost already. And this is absolutely like meaningless campaign, because this country is fighting against you. You will never capture us. You will never take the full control. And for us, we were trying, like what we were doing, we posted on a daily basis Russian losses in personnel, tanks, artillery systems, aircrafts, and just see like how much you've lost. We posted that infographics to compare their losses in two Chechen wars and war in Afghanistan, and like, look, the entire former Soviet Union lost in Afghanistan about 15,000 personnel. In a week of this in a month of this full-scale invasion, you've lost already more. So how long are you going to fight? Like 10 years, one month? Just compare. Are you ready to feel that and to have these losses? And the number 3 priority for us was to address to the West with our request to help us with military aid. And it was also quite a challenge. And of course, our president and our Minister of Foreign Affairs did a phenomenal job, like trying to make this
really
Western
tireless
coalition.
Work, right? Every day.
Exactly. Like, again, we had to convince our Western partners that it's worth it to help us, that it's not an escalation of the war, just help us with the weapon, just for us to protect ourselves and protect you. So that was actually a big task for us. But what was why we were so confident in this? Because we know 100% that we are right in this war, that this is black and white. There are no gray zones here. It's completely evident who is the victim, who is the aggressor. That's completely understandable that we are fighting for our common values. And if these values still matter for you, so help us to defend those values of democracy, freedom. And of course, we were trying to show that this is bigger than the conflict between two countries. This is an entire civilization war between authoritarian and democratic regimes, and you can't be not included. You are already the part, and you just have to switch what side you choose.
Let's talk a little bit about the platforms you used. In particular, maybe we can briefly touch upon social media. I was wondering if you could maybe share some insight into which platforms you felt you were more successful at using, maybe which ones you were less successful, which were more difficult, which were maybe more overwhelmed by toxic disinformation that was difficult to counter.
It's a difficult question, but thank you for it. So, talking about the account of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, General Zaluzhnyi, in the beginning we had on the Facebook page for him, as a page of the Commander-in-Chief. So, and I have to admit that it was really effective as a platform to communicate. Within the first day of a full-scale war, the coverage of his page increased to more than 7 million viewers, which is huge. And this spike of the interest was so evident. And when we just came to this third priority to communicate to the world, to Western partners, and to make the voice of the armed forces loud, we decided to create the account in former Twitter, now X platform, because like where your audience is, you have to go there, and we also had to go to Telegram, which was like the necessity at that time, trying to spread the messages which were mostly addressed to the adversary and to the internal audiences in Russian Federation and Belarus. And they had the option to see them because they couldn't see Meta. So that's why we used Telegram for that purpose. And of course, we were not limited only with accounts of the commander-in-chief or the official accounts of the armed forces. We used much more. That's why it's important to build this entire ecosystem around you, using different stakeholders, celebrities, etc., people who already have a big audience, and just, to engage here into your activities.
I think one thing we are finally realizing is that this war, is long, and it has its ebbs and flows, and it seems that at least many audiences in the West have a tendency to really kind of overreact emotionally to developments, sort of at one point thinking everything is hopeless and, really Russia will take Kyiv in 3 days, then maybe overreacting when Ukraine has some successes, thinking that the initiative has gone the other way decisively, and then again swinging back and forth. How has your communication strategy adapted or evolved in line with these developments to ensure that the support for Ukraine remains steady, remains robust, that it does not diminish?
So actually strategy is strategy because it is a long term. So, but of course, when I mentioned that we have to adjust our messages according to the situation, it's obvious. So, and that was a great actually message by General Zaluzhnyi to the world when there were huge discussions around our counteroffensive in the south, when he said, this is not a football match. So this is not a game you can just make fun or that stuff. So it's not that. It's not that. So we are suffering, and this is so difficult. That was number one. Number two, what we're trying to communicate that the enemy is quite a serious one. So we can joke a lot about and even in our language there were some memes about Russians and all that fun around that, but it's not funny when this enemy is in front of you. So and this is quite a capable and innovative enemy, and the entire Russian machine is fully concentrated to gain superiority and to win this war. So the economy is working on that purposes, and they have their own mobilization, and their resources are just almost unlimited. So that's why we were trying to wake up our partners and say, guys, without you we can't survive, but for you to help us, you have also to change the way how you are trying to tackle the issue. So to invest in the military, in defense tech, invest and do and act. So that was different messages, but what is challenging that it's not only about our foreign audiences and some interaction with partners, it's also the fatigue inside Ukrainian society, and it's what sociologists and psychologists admit, that people are tired, exhausted, extremely. It's too long, and obviously it's very hard, but we all understand that we do not have any other choice. And those who are realistic, they are preparing, and everyone knows that I will be in the uniform as well. So it depends on the matter of time when.
You raise a very interesting point about Russia, despite taking immense losses and suffering setbacks in the battlefield, they are, of course, capable of learning and adapting and garnering lessons. I was wondering if you have seen the same in the information domain, that maybe they have also evolved their disinformation, either methods of delivery or networks or narratives, more than 2 years now since the full-scale invasion?
What they are really skilled in, of course, this is propaganda and disinformation themselves. That's definitely they are like strong side, and this is their beauty of authoritarian centralized regimes, that you just, you have your narrative, you have all the assets, you have enough money, and you are doing that in every part of the world you want to do. So that's very difficult to beat them in this battlefield, for sure, because of the limited resources and because the lie has much more strength to be spread than the truth. And another strong side of Russians, I have to acknowledge, and unfortunately I have to say that they are really skilled in the psyops. And they are changing, they are improving, they are working with vulnerable categories, with members of families of our
Do you
soldiers.
think you can say any example of this, or is this...
Bunch of them. So especially like trying to undermine our mobilization, they are circulating like bunch of really destructive messages among families of our soldiers. They are developing all that like legal advice and spread them how to avoid mobilization. They are, producing different videos, like comparing, like you see, you can have this successful, fancy life, whatever, and you are in trenches suffering while you're doing that. So they are skilled in that, but thanks God, like we are also already trained for 10 years, just, to find what is like really fake, deep fake, disinformation, part of the psyops, and just publicly deny that you see and debunk this. And our people are in the uniform as well are skilled enough like to identify where is the threat.
You raised a really interesting point, drawing this contrast between, Russia as an authoritarian, maybe totalitarian, probably, society now, not having any issue with getting its narrative just very top-down enforced. Democracies do not have such a setup, fortunately, but it comes with its own set of difficulties. And Ukraine, of course, is a democracy, one that is undergoing its own domestic reforms and all sorts of challenges of institution building and, EU accession and all of this stuff. And that can be messy. Can you talk a little bit about that? How difficult has it been to get everyone on the same page and hold this unity, armed forces, president, parliament, NGOs, media, all of this, how has that been?
Yeah, so actually we are really united as a nation in the face of aggression. So this full-scale invasion actually helped us first to feel who we are and why being Ukrainian is so important for us, to speak our own language, to follow our traditions, to build our own country with the vision how we see it. So that was like, people just regardless the region, the language they spoke, they became like one family, like so close. And internally, we avoid any public criticizing of the government, president's office, the president himself, or some steps, or the military. Of course, we know that there are some gaps, there are some mistakes, there are some vulnerabilities, but we don't want, and all people who are smart enough, they analyze that now it's not a right time to raise these issues. Of course, we have to solve like some problems and just to do that internally, but do not, as you rightly mentioned, do not create this mess around people. People have to trust to their government, to the military, and see this unity and be sure that the leadership knows where we are moving, how we are moving, and what is our end state, how we envision victory and communicate it properly. So yes, we are united, but yes, it's difficult to operate in the democratic way when you have this pluralism of thoughts, different moments, many challenges, and again, we have to fight many wars simultaneously, to fight against Russians, to fight for moving to EU and NATO accession. So this is different battlefields, but we don't have any other choice. We have to do that, and I think we can do that.
No, thank you for that. I think two more topics that I wanted to touch upon. We spoke about tailoring different messaging to various audiences and spreading your kind of truth, about the nature of the war and, Russia's imperial war of aggression. One audience that I think I would like to discuss more is the global south, where Russia has had significant success positioning itself as some sort of anti-colonial champion that is, against this imperial West, and, accusing Western countries of double standards, that, you are so interested in Ukraine, but what about, Gaza? What about dozens of conflicts that are raging now around the world? How has Ukraine gone about this challenge? Do you feel that you have been, what have been the challenges in, speaking to African countries, Latin American countries about this?
The main challenge is limited resources. We can't even compare the resources available for Russians, including money, personnel, loan ties, etc., different agents and entire network in these countries, to what we have. And we cannot afford to have more, and this is the truth here. We have just to acknowledge that. So with these limited resources, we have to think how we have to be maximum efficient, having minimum resources. So that's why it pushes us first to make priorities. So what is more important for us? To have strong support from Western countries and this military aid, so to prioritize our goals, our objectives. So of course the West is more important in terms of who is our partner, who can help us to win the war, to survive. But yes, the global south, the countries, and just given the population, the economic level, etc., they are really important. So what we can do, and this is number two, we can work using our diaspora, using people who are here, and understand the context, because context is important. You are absolutely right that many people in the so-called global south do not support Ukraine because the West supports Ukraine, and they don't like this imperialistic West, how they envision it. And that's why, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so that makes them closer to Russia, and of course that historic ties from former USSR, etc., and the Russian influence in general. So of course this is the reality. So we have to navigate into this very complex environment, understanding the context, and without the representatives on the ground, without scientists who knows, who can analyze, who can help us, okay, this is some period of history we can use to explain that Ukraine is also fighting for its independence against empire, and this empire is Russian Federation. So this is just to change the narrative. And my biggest hope, and what I was doing when I was in my position the most, to encourage journalists from different countries to show what's going on. So our task was to give access to those, to Al Jazeera and other media who can communicate, to different information agencies who operate in different languages. So we were we were trying to be as open as we could, as we can. And of course, many mistakes were done here, including accreditation, access, really concerns about OPSEC, etc. But we are moving, and we are inviting journalists, come and do your job, show to your entire people what's going on here, say the truth.
One final question. You are now in Riga, and you're, speaking to many people, I hope, outside of this podcast. Do you see sufficient belief in the people you meet that Ukraine can win the war? Whenever you meet people from Western countries, from European countries, from other places, do you still see this belief?
I do see it, and actually, like I was so happy to hear yesterday on one of the main panels that Ukraine's victory will be the victory for entire West, and why Ukraine matters, why the Western countries have not just support Ukraine in this fight, but to include it, to invite to NATO membership, and that what gives us hope. And of course, we all understand that with NATO membership, we will be secured as Baltic states. Just the so clear example. And I just have to admit that I was such a fan of what the NATO Center of Excellence here is doing. I was following the website and reading all the articles, reports, etc. when I was working on the ground. And it was my dream to come to this event. And it's just, a miracle that I'm not only attendee, I'm a speaker here. It's such a privilege and honor for me. And yeah, thank you for having me.
No, the privilege is all ours. We were joined by Dr. Liudmyla Dolhonovska. Thank you so much.
Thank you.